Going to talk about the bus today, the bus build, buying the bus, and all the things we had to do to it. It's a 2008 International CE 200 bus. It's a 65 or 68 passenger. It was wheelchair accessible, and I think it was an 11 window. And when we bought it, it had 168,000 miles on it. We bought it at an auction in the state of Wisconsin for $1,100. Okay, after we bought it, all the things that we found wrong with it, which you never know what you're going to find until after you buy it. We had a steering column that was hanging up and binding, typical for this year of bus. We ended up having to replace the steering column from the steering wheel all the way down to the steering box under the hood. That was a little expensive, but it had to be done. It has a rear air conditioner powered by a set of fans and a condenser right here under the bus. That was leaking and rotted. That had to get replaced. I replaced that down in Texas. I took it down to Texas to pick up my sister during COVID, and I really needed AC, I found out. So that was a little expensive, but we got it done. The tires that were on it were good enough tread, but they had slow leaks and the rims were very rusty. So I ended up putting new tires on it, all 6. And again, that was very expensive. I think that was close to $3,000 just for tires. The other things that were done were I had to replace the belt, do an oil change service on it, and there was an idler pulley on the engine that needed to be replaced. That was fairly inexpensive. I also found out that I did not have a properly working parking brake. That needed a servo, and that servo was about $700, and that wasn't cheap, but I got a parking brake finally. Then I found out that I needed rear calipers and all the brakes redone. So now I'm getting to the point where it's expensive, but it's safe. So the build consisted of taking out all the bus windows, sheeting it, and installing RV style windows in it. I then learned later that I needed a fuel tank because the fuel tank that was inside this bus had a leak and had to be replaced. So I drove to Minnesota in my car and I picked up this fuel tank, which is about the size of a casket, and hauled that back. The door here on the side, this is the accessibility for the wheelchairs. I left this door in place because I do have larger items inside the camper, such as a household refrigerator and things like that. That is an easy way to get it in and out It did have a little rust because it's a Wisconsin bus, and there's still a little rust here and a little damage there that I just haven't gotten around to doing anything about. The toolboxes were cut out and screwed together and installed using rivets onto the body panels, and also screwing the top of it into the floor rails. We have this awning that I took off a old fifth wheel camper and fabricated it to the bus, and it's been working perfectly ever since. Up on the top up there, you see I have an exterior light, and I also have outside cameras. I have one on either side of the bus, rear facing. I have one on the front of the bus, forward facing. And I have one in the rear of the bus, obviously rearward facing. This rear bumper used to have a hole in it where that exhaust came through, but because I have a holding tank for my sewer right behind those two bicycles up underneath the frame, I had to move the exhaust and it wouldn't fit there anymore, so I ran it to the bottom. The back here, again, the door was rusted. I cut the door off about middle of the door, right by the handle, and cut off all the rusted pieces. I moved the bottom hinge of the door up to about where the backup light is there. You can see the two buttons. Those are two rivets. And then this does access inside our bedroom. We have a screen there, so we use that as an extra window. 400 watts of solar, and I added two fantastic fan vents. They work pretty great. I did take the air conditioner off that fifth wheel that I used for parts, and I installed it on top of the bus. On this bus, like many, I have all my electronics fuses for the bus itself right there, and I can also grab power if I need it for any other accessories that I run, if I want to power them by the bus batteries, which I do. Little storage for some tools, because I was able to cut out and rivet all the way around to make a strong connection, and then I also bolted it up through the top to the frame rails. That's held up very well. I have the gray tank over here. I do have my dump valves on the bottom there. I have an Anderson can't leak water station, dry camping, winter sanitize, city, and tank. I do have 30 amp electric there. I run a generator or I plug into shore power. I have the shower output right there. I left all the original bus heaters in place. The front heater, the midship heater, and the rear heater. They are all functional, and they do work while you're going down the road to keep the bus nice and warm. Under the hood, pretty stock. I haven't done anything under here, except for I have replaced the radiator hose. It was a little spongy. This is the new idler tensioner, and I do need to replace one of these idlers yet. The bus was in very good condition when I bought it. as far as maintenance wise, it was very well taken care of. I did end up replacing all the shocks before I left on this trip, just to get a smoother ride, and I am so glad I did. It made one heck of a difference in the ride of the bus. The other thing I did when I got it was I took it into the International dealership in Madison, Wisconsin, and told him what I was going to use the bus for, and asked him if he could adjust the governor setting so I could get it up to, 65, 70, 75 on the interstate, because these things have governors in them because they're school buses. They don't want them to go very fast. So he did that for me, and I can cruise 70, 75 miles an hour pretty effortlessly, where I've heard other buses have a hard time getting up to 60, 65. And I do climb through the mountains fairly well. It's a bus, so it takes a little bit. This is a Max Force International diesel. And again, here's this brand new steering column that was replaced from the steering gear all the way up to the steering wheel. I also put in a new master cylinder, as it was not performing very well. And I guess the more I talk about it, the more stuff that I've replaced on it. I guess I didn't realize how much I'd done to it. The trip down here was pretty eventless, except for around Flagstaff coming out of the mountains. And as I pulled into a state forest for the night, I realized that I had broke a brake line and that it was leaking, and I had no brakes after I pulled into the national forest. And I guess that could have been worse if I had lost my brakes coming down the mountain. The door here, the entry door, I pulled out the old school door, and I built a frame and sheeted it and installed this door. So that, in a nutshell, I believe, is the outside of the bus. So that's what I got for now, and we'll see you later.